people of the United States would not be greatly disposed to quarrel with me for carrying the same usage abroad. I am happy to believe that my confidence in that great nation was not misplaced. When this book was first published, I was given to understand by some authorities that the Water Toast Association and eloquence were beyond all bounds of belief. Therefore, I record the fact that all that portion of Martin Chuzzlewit's experiences is a literal paraphrase of some reports of public proceedings in the United States, especially in the proceedings of a certain Brandywine Association, which were printed in the Times newspaper in June and July 1843, at about the time I was engaged in writing those parts of the book, and which remain on the file of the Times newspaper, of course. In all my writings, I hope I have taken every available opportunity of showing the want of sanitary improvements in the neglected dwellings of the poor. Mrs. Sarah Gamp was, 24 years ago, a fair representation of the hired attendant on the poor in sickness. The hospitals of London were, in many respects, noble institutions, in others, very defective. I think it not the least among the instances of their mismanagement that Mrs. Betsy Prigg was a fair specimen of a hospital nurse, and that the hospitals, with their means and funds, should have left it to private humanity and enterprise to enter on an attempt to improve that class of persons, since greatly improved through the agency of good women. The characters in this story. Bailey, Jr., boots at Mrs. Todger's commercial boarding house, afterwards Tiger to Tig Montague. Mr. Bevan, a warm-hearted Massachusetts physician. Jefferson Brick, war correspondent of the New York Rowdy Journal. Mr. Chuffy, a weazen-faced old man, clerk to Anthony Chuzzlewit. General Cyrus Choke, an American militia officer. Major Hannibal Chollop, a worshipper of freedom. Anthony Chuzzlewit, father of Jonas and brother of the elder Martin. Jonas Chuzzlewit, his son, a sly, cunning, scheming man. Martin Chuzzlewit Sr., a rich and eccentric old gentleman. Martin Chuzzlewit the younger, the hero of the story, grandson of the proceeding, by whom he is brought up. David Crimple, a pawnbroker, afterwards secretary to the Anglo-Bengali Assurance Company. Colonel Diver, editor of the New York Rowdy Journal. Mr. Phipps, a lawyer. General Fladdock, a starched and punctilious American militia officer. Dr. John Jobling, medical officer to the Anglo-Bengali Assurance Company. Mr. Lafayette Kettle, an inquisitive, bombastic American. Mr. Lewsome, a degraded assistant to a London general medical practitioner. Mr. Augustus Model, the youngest gentleman at Mrs. Todger's. Mr. Mould, an undertaker. Mr. Nadgett, Tom Pinch's landlord and a secret inquiry agent. Seth Pecksniff, a resident near Salisbury, ostensibly an architect and land surveyor, who receives Martin Chuzzlewit as a pupil. Tom Pinch, an unpretentious but high-souled man, assistant to Mr. Pecksniff. The Honourable Elijah Pogram, a member of Congress. Zephaniah Scadder, agent of the Eden Land Corporation. Chevy Slime, a poor and shiftless relative of old Martin Chuzzlewit. Mr. Spottletoe, a designing relative of old Martin Chuzzlewit. Paul Sweedlepipe, Poll, a bird fancier and hairdresser. Mark Tapley, hostler at the Blue Dragon Inn, afterwards manservant to young Martin Chuzzlewit. Montague Tigg,